Alongside Blair Angulo, I am Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show. We appreciate you watching us on YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button and ensure that you are subscribed to the channel because we have a lot going on this week, this month, a lot going on this past weekend, which is where I want to start the conversation today, Blair, because I don't know if you saw what happened at USC, but just when you thought that maybe these visits were going to be a little bit more chill on recruiting visits after they banned the photo shoots, USC reminded us that all bets are off for official visitors. That's from safety Drake Stubbs, a top 100 player nationally. He's already committed to the Trojans. But Blair, check this out. I mean, green screen technology, you've got those insane graphics. What do you think about the videos coming out of USC this weekend?
I'm a big fan. They are upping the ante, right? Like it's one of those things where I think we're going to see this a lot more now. I think a lot of programs are going to try to copy this because it's so cool. It's new. It's something that recruits gravitate to. We saw the car photo shoots a few years ago. Nico Iamaleava, who could forget him inside a Benzo over at Neyland Stadium. You had the cookie cakes about a decade ago, and now this is going to be a ceremonial thing that I think kicks things off into a new stratosphere in terms of recruiting visits, photo shoots, videos. It's cinematic, it's Hollywood, it's USC, and it fits them to a T.
Oh, yeah. And I hate to sound a million years old by saying kids these days love that kind of stuff, but they do. I mean, something that's unique and interesting for their social media pages. Yeah, I'm 10 out of 10 USC. Those videos were absolutely epic. Let's tell you what's on tap for today's show. It is a loaded show. We go around the country for a recruiting roundup, but we'll also head to two powerhouses to get the inside info at Alabama and Ohio State. We also have some special guests at the very end of the show, breaking down some of the top recruiters in college football. But let's kick things off by going around the country with the latest recruiting intel. We'll hear from national recruiting analysts Tom Loy, Brandon Huffman, and Alan True. Here's Tom to start off our recruiting roundup.
Thanks, Emily. After a weekend loaded with visits all across the country, there are two prospects I want to discuss a little further. The first is top 100 elite quarterback Keelan Russell. He's currently committed to SMU, but over the weekend he was in Tuscaloosa checking out Alabama. He met with Kalen DeBoer, Nick Sheridan, and the rest of the Alabama coaching staff. Coming out of the trip, I feel great about the Crimson Tide, and my crystal ball prediction reflects that. I have Alabama landing him and securing his commitment. Not sure exactly when it's going to happen. I know others are still in play. He's considering a variety of schools, but I think that Alabama is best positioned to flip him from SMU. Mike Roach, Brett Greenberg, both joined me on the crystal ball. We feel great about the Tide. The other one I want to talk about is top 100 receiver Donovan Olubade. The IMG Academy standout was at USC over the weekend. This is one that I felt Missouri was leading for a very long time, and technically I still have them having the edge. They also get the final official visit in June, which is going to be huge before his summer final decision. But USC has made this extremely tight. The Trojans had a game changer of a visit and skyrocketed up his leaderboard. Right now, I see this coming down to USC versus Missouri. Like I said, I still have the Tigers with an edge, but USC has made this extremely close. Now let's head out to Brandon Huffman out west and see how things are going.
Thanks, Tom. This week, two of the top players in Northern California took visits. One was an official visit, one was an unofficial visit, but both visits factor in heavily in each respective recruit's recruitment. One of those players, Marco Jones, the number one player in Northern California on the defensive side of the ball, took an official visit to Michigan, and it gave him an opportunity to spend time with first-year head coach Sherrone Moore. Now, Jones had USC in his top 10, and he has now recently added an official visit down to Los Angeles, as well as visits to Texas and Texas A&M in June. But Michigan set a high bar this past weekend, and the Wolverines are very much going to factor into his decision, which he's anticipating making during the summer. Unofficially, Josiah Sharma, the defensive lineman out of Folsom, California, took an official visit to Washington back in April, where he committed on New Year's Day, but then decommitted when Kalen DeBoer left for the Alabama job. Now, Sharma will head to Alabama later this month. He'll also visit Texas, but in between those two visits to Texas and Alabama will be an official visit to Oregon. He spent this past weekend in Eugene, took the unofficial visit on Friday, spent all day Friday and Saturday in Eugene with Tosh Lapoy and with Dan Lanning, and the Ducks are very much a factor in his recruitment. We can't count out the Huskies altogether. They were the first school that he committed to, but Kalen DeBoer at Alabama now is another factor in his recruitment now that he is down in Tuscaloosa, while Texas, where he took an unofficial visit to earlier this spring, is also a significant threat for him. But keep an eye on the Ducks After this weekend's unofficial visit to Eugene, Oregon is starting to make their move with Sharma, one of the premier defensive linemen out west. Now let's throw it out to Alan True, who's got some notes on Midwest recruiting.
Thanks, Huff. Ohio State is working very hard to keep four-star edge rusher Justin Hill inside state lines. Buckeyes had him up for his official visit over the weekend and are contending with the likes of USC, Oregon, and Alabama, who he has officials set with for the rest of this month. Ohio State had a chance to set the bar with him, though, and set it extremely high coming out of the visit. He had a chance to spend more time with the staff and see how he fits into their defense, which he fits it extremely well as a jack linebacker, a hybrid pass rusher who does many of the roles similar to what he already does at Winton Woods. Bucknuts insider Bill Kurelic says coming out of the visit, Ohio State's in a great spot for Hill, and I tend to agree with him. While Ohio State is trying to keep Hill at home, Georgia is trying to come into the Midwest and take wide receiver Talon Taylor out of the region. Taylor has a really good relationship with the staff and is building a good one with wide receivers coach James Coley. That's a key one for this recruitment because he had a really good relationship with previous receivers coach Brian McClendon, and Coley has come in and picked up that relationship and done a great job. Coming out of Georgia, I think they set the bar for Taylor and are likely the team to beat right now, although he has officials still coming with Notre Dame and Ohio State, two schools that have wide receiver development to sell and are in the Midwest, although he's made it clear that being closer to home and proximity is not necessarily a deciding factor for him. It is about wide receiver development and relationships, with which Georgia has both of those. So coming out of those visits, I like Justin Hill to potentially stay in the Midwest and Talon Taylor to possibly leave it. Back to you, Blair.
Thanks, Alan. A lot of activity out west. One player I want to highlight to kick things off, top 24/7 offensive tackle Aaron Dunn took his official visit to USC this past weekend. It's the third trip he's taken this offseason. He's been previously to BYU and been to UCLA as well. He's got Utah and Oregon on the docket, but I think that the Trojans are setting the benchmark here in this recruiting battle, and it's an important one because of their move to the Big Ten. He's one of the best offensive tackles in the country, the number 3 rated offensive tackle out west. It would be a huge pull for USC, which needs to win some of these recruiting battles up front in the trenches as they move into a new conference. Aaron Dunn told me that he feels like he would be developed at USC. He's really comfortable in Los Angeles. It is shaping up to be a West Coast battle. I mentioned the 4 other schools, but USC right now, if you had to gauge it, has to feel good about its chances heading into the summer. And the other player I wanted to highlight, Darius Dixon, a top 100 cornerback from Powerhouse Mater Dei in Orange County out in California, made it up to Seattle for that official visit to Washington, talked about the experience on the lake, being able to be on the boat with other recruits and experiencing everything that Seattle and the offseason can offer a player when they go up there, when they don't get a chance to experience the game day atmosphere. He loves the coaching staff, loves what they do with defensive backs in particular and what they were able to do at Arizona previously. He's got official visits coming up to Penn State and Tennessee before the month is over. Does want to make a decision this summer, but right now Washington setting a really high bar for one of the top players on the West Coast.
I love it. And there you go. We can just end the show right there. I mean, we just went around the entire country with recruiting analysis from all of our national analysts. We really do appreciate that. You can check out more of their work at 247sports.com. You got crystal balls, analysis, VIP info. 247sports.com is the place to be for all that and more. We are going to continue the show, and we're talking about Alabama, as most of the college football community waits to see what Kalen DeBoer can do in his first fall coaching the Crimson Tide. We are keeping tabs on his first offseason of recruiting at Alabama. This month will prove huge as he puts together his first official class, and the work began over the weekend with visitors in T-Town. So let's keep the Tide talk rolling and welcome in our friend Brett Greenberg of Bama247. And Brett, I got to ask you about 3 crystal balls that went in for one player over the weekend. You put in one for SMU quarterback commit Keelan Russell. What makes you so confident that he can flip from SMU to the Tide?
Yeah, Tom hit on it a little bit earlier in the show, but in talking with Keelan, Duncanville High School quarterback before the visit, kind of felt like Alabama was in a very good spot heading into the trip. Talking with some people after the trip, talking with Keelan himself Sunday afternoon, felt really even better about my crystal ball prediction that I put in on Saturday afternoon. He talked about the connection he has with Nick Sheridan, the connection he has with Kalen DeBoer, the depth chart he talked about, the offensive scheme he talked about. He also mentioned how his host was Ryan Williams. We've seen Ryan Williams, his ability to get a couple people in the class and his ability to recruit. So anytime he's around and his name's brought up, that's a very good thing. And, one thing he also talked about is he just felt like the red carpet treatment all weekend. His family was in town. He's talking about how his parents loved it. His sister loved it. There was many coaches around him at all times. It just, very clear to him and his family that he is quarterback one on the Alabama board, and quite frankly, may be the only quarterback on this board. Like Tom Lowe was mentioning, I still feel really good about my crystal ball. Last check, he has an official visit to Florida this weekend, Oregon to wrap up June. He's planning on taking those visits. That'll be one thing to monitor. But right now, I like Alabama where they stand to eventually flip the SMU quarterback commit.
Would be a huge pull for the Crimson Tide in the Lone Star State. And Brett, I know Alabama and every other SEC program wants to recruit the state of Texas. I don't know if it would be an overreaction if I said they fell short of that last cycle. Only one top 24/7 prospect from the state of Texas in that class. And that brings me to my next point. Ty Haywood, his official visit. What's the latest there as Alabama tries to reel that one in?
Yeah, this is, one that we've been following kind of quietly the last couple of weeks, on Bama247, kind of been hitting on it. I think, Alabama was in a good spot going into this visit, maybe better than people thought. This is a guy who grew up in Mississippi, grew up watching Alabama, said he's been watching Alabama since he's 5 years old. His mom likes Alabama. This was his first visit, and it seems like he maybe didn't even know how much he was going to enjoy it. Similar to Keelan Russell, Kalen DeBoer was around him. Quote, he said, basically the whole time that weekend. So it was very clear that he's a priority for the University of Alabama. He loves Coach Cap. He had a little bit of a relationship from Coach Cap's brief stint at Baylor. So this is one that I think Alabama may be in the lead for. I'm not ready to put any crystal ball or anything like that, just with a bunch of visits set. You've got A&M, Oklahoma, and FSU in that order to round out June. But, for right now, coming out of the weekend, it seems like Alabama is in a very, very good spot for the five-star tackle out of Texas.
A lot of high-profile visitors on campus this weekend. I want to ask you about Todd Robinson, currently listed as a running back on our website, but it sounds like Alabama will be recruiting him as a defensive back. What are you hearing overall about his second official visit to Alabama?
Yeah, so like you said right there, it's a little bit of a unique prospect, down in South Georgia, Valdosta, very good style of football, very high level of football, plays quarterback for them, lights it up. And now teams like Georgia, Alabama, a few others really want him at that safety, even nickel role. And I asked him kind of quite point blank yesterday, is that something you want to do? And he said, absolutely. And, likewise to a lot of defensive backs we talked to, that 4-2-5 defense that Kane Womack brought in, that extra defensive back not only has that versatility factor, but the ability to maybe get on the field a little bit earlier. That's just kind of an added bonus for him. Absolutely loves Coach Maurice Linguist, loves Coach Colin Hitchler, spent a bunch of time with them. He's got an OV set to Georgia this weekend and a couple others, but I like where Alabama stands, but like with a lot of Peach State guys, it's going to be tough to get them out of the state just with the way, Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs are recruiting.
Brett, I think if you told a few Alabama fans that Nick Saban would have retired and that they would be number 8 in the recruiting rankings heading into the summer, I think a lot of people would be taking that, right? I think they'd say, oh, we've done a really good job. They are still working on several other prospects. Who else is on Alabama's radar heading into the summer?
Yeah, I think, there's a whole bunch of them, but we'll start with Dawson Merritt off the top, who's set to officially visit this weekend. He's kind of point blank said it explicitly. It's down in Nebraska and Alabama for the number 6 linebacker in the country. He will play that Wolf position should he end up going to Alabama. But this one's coming down to Alabama and Nebraska. He's getting to Alabama one more time this weekend. Absolutely loves this entire staff. Had a lot of prior relationships from the Washington days. Right now, I'm kind of 50-50 just between the Cornhuskers and the Crimson Tide. But I think, another good visit at Alabama is going to maybe turn the tide a little bit. And I think it goes into decision mode shortly after that. So that'll certainly be one to follow this weekend. And then another one I'm looking at as well, and he'll be down there this weekend as well, is another top 247 offensive tackle, Michael Carroll. who Alabama hosted for the spring game up in April, and it seemed like at the spring Alabama was kind of the leader at one point. Now he's he's got visits to Michigan and Penn State coming up as well. Most people I talk to feel like Alabama and Michigan are in the best spot going forward for Carroll. But we're going to see how that shapes up this weekend. And the next guy we're looking at is another guy in the trenches, West Coast, 3-sport athlete, Jackson Lloyd, 4-star offensive tackle. You can never have too many offensive tackles in the trenches. And this year, certainly, it seems like it's kind of a up year at the position as a whole. He visited up in January, returned in March for a spring practice, spent more time with Chris Kapilovich, the offensive line coach, has great relationships with all the Washington staff from the Washington recruitment. He's got USC lined up. He's got Ohio State lined up. So that'll be one to monitor as well.
So many prospects to keep up with this time of year. Brett, we got to let you get on with the rest of your day. I'm sure you could just keep listing all of these guys, but we appreciate you being here. And if you want to read more about some of those prospects, you can head to Bama247.com from softball coverage to the recent news that Nick Saban is on the ballot for induction into the College Football Hall of Fame. I wonder if he gets in. You can check it all out at Bama247.com. Let the official visit talk continue. This time we head to the Shoe, where the #1 wide receiver in the 2024 class, DeCorian Moore, spent the weekend. Just what Ohio State needs. More wide receiver talent. Pun absolutely intended there. We can always use more talent, though, on this show, so let's welcome in Bill Kurelic of Bucknuts.com. Bill, let's start there. What are you hearing out of DeCorian Moore's visit this weekend?
Well, the Buckeyes really hit it out of the park with DeCorian. It was DeCorian and 5 family members, including his mom and his mom's aunt, and they all came away very impressed. As his mom put it, when DeCorian and her visited Ohio State several weeks ago, she didn't think it could get any better, but it absolutely got better this past weekend. She said Ohio State rolled out the red carpet, had everything very organized and ready. And not only did DeCorian come away very impressed, but the entire family did. And the family really has kind of signed off. Said, DeCorian, if that is where you want to play your college football, we're okay with it. So, it just made a huge impression. Now, DeCorian still has official visits to take. That was his first official visit. He's going to go to LSU. He's going to go to Texas, and he's going to go to Oregon. But right now, Ohio State has made themselves absolutely a school to keep in mind for the final destination for DeCorian Moore.
I don't think we've ever heard that before, Ohio State doing well with a wide receiver prospect. Bill, you mentioned that they hit it out of the park. Now, that brings me to Bo Jackson, another name that has the baseball and the football relation there. What kind of baseball reference can you throw at us with Bo Jackson and Ohio State?
Well, I think that maybe safe at home, because I had crystal balled Bo Jackson to Ohio State back in January, and this official visit did nothing. In fact, not only did nothing to change my mind on that pick, but it actually helped me feel even better about the pick. It went extremely well. Carlos Lachlan, the new Ohio State running backs coach, has developed a great relationship with Bo, and the visit went extremely well. His family came away impressed, and he's got another official visit to take yet. Bo has been to Georgia, and he really loved it down there too. He went to Ohio State this past weekend, but he still has Alabama to go. But I think when all is said and done, and Bo announces his decision, I continue to like where the Buckeyes stand.
All right, 2 headliners, but a lot of other visitors in Columbus over the weekend. Who are some other big names we need to keep an eye on?
Well, Emily, certainly Vernell Brown, the wide receiver from Florida. He's absolutely, and we keep talking Ohio State and wide receivers. There's a reason there. They bring in, do as good a job, Brian Hartline and Ryan Day is anybody, probably a better job than anybody in the country at getting wide receivers. And Vernell Brown had a great time. I think Ohio State right now would be the school to beat, but you've got to be a little bit wary still, because he's got 3 official visits left to go, and they are all to the Florida schools. They are to Florida, Florida State, Miami. So you've got to worry about that a little bit. But Ohio State certainly has been impressive to Vernell. Certainly Riley Pettijohn, another Texan. He's a linebacker, and he had a great visit with the Buckeyes this past weekend. Going into it, I didn't know, could Ohio State pull this off and beat out the Texas Longhorns for Riley Pettijohn? Now I think it's a lot closer than most people maybe thought a month or two ago. I think in the end, Riley will most likely decide between Ohio State and Texas, and he still has that Texas official visit to go. But certainly he is a guy that Ohio State did very well this past weekend with. And then, of course, we haven't talked about maybe my favorite guy as far as is the Buckeyes and a need guy, that being Justin Hill. He's actually Alan True talked about him earlier in the show. He is an edge, rush end linebacker. He'd probably sell popcorn at halftime, maybe. He's that good. The night I saw him play in person as a junior, his coach told me, Bill, you're going to be wowed by this kid. And I went home very, very wowed. He fits the Ohio State jack position. That's the kind of rush edge position that Alan True mentioned. He fits that position perfectly. And he's a guy that while Justin's going to still take official visits, he has just taken the Ohio State visit. He still has USC, Alabama, and Oregon to go. But I really, really like where Ohio State stands with him. And absolutely, in my mind, the Buckeyes are the team to beat for Justin Hill.
Plenty of popcorn to go around right now with the Buckeyes. They're cooking, as the kids would say, Bill. Number 2 class nationally right now, and they just had a big official visit weekend. Who are some other names that you have on your radar in the coming weeks?
Well, arguably the biggest guy remaining because of Ohio State's need at offensive tackle for this recruiting class is David Sanders, who he is the best in the country, the best offensive tackle, best offensive lineman in the country. He's going to make his official visit at the end to Ohio State. He has June 21st. That is his last official visit before he makes a decision. And right now, I think Ohio State and Tennessee might have the lead for David Sanders. So certainly he is a big one. Definitely also Dorian Brew. He'll visit Ohio State the June 21st weekend. He is the corner. Used to be an Ohioan. He played his high school football up until the middle of last season in Ohio, but now he's in Texas. He will make an official visit to Ohio State. He is certainly a guy that's of need. Josh Petty, an offensive lineman from Georgia. Ohio State's making a good late run for him. I think Ohio State has a realistic shot at landing him as well. And then you go to safety, Fahim Delane from Maryland. He makes his official visit to Ohio State this coming weekend, and Ohio State needs to get at least 3 top safeties in this class. They have a commitment from 1 already, and if they could get Fahim Delane and then Trey McNutt is the other guy from Shaker Heights High School in Ohio, if they could add those 2 to this class, it would be a spectacular haul for new Ohio State safeties coach Matt Guerrieri.
Bill, the Dean of Ohio State Recruiting. We appreciate you being here with us. Of course, you can check out more of his work at bucknuts.com. Just be sure to bring the popcorn. Find out if Ohio State lands a good wide receiver. We'll see. If you haven't been paying attention this offseason, Ohio State has, of course, been busy adding superstar after superstar, so read up on all of it at bucknuts.com. Taking a look now at the 24/7 Sports top recruiter rankings for 2024, the man at the top of the list, who is in bold, Fran Brown, of course, earned his spot because of his work as Georgia's defensive backs coach. Now he's the head coach at Syracuse, and a lot of the usual teams are represented here on this list. But you don't want to hear me talk about it, so let's check in with our friends Carl Reed and Smoke Dixon of 24/7 Sports Unfiltered.
Thank you, Emily. Welcome to Unfiltered. This is Carl Reed with my man Smoke Dixon. Smoke, we're going to talk about some of the best recruiters in the country today. You've been in the game a long time as a player and a coach. What to you makes a great recruiter?
Well, Carl, when you talk about recruiting, you got to be able to communicate, build relationships, be able to be tossed off in any part of the world if you were in the South, North, East, or West, and come home with a product that you went out to go get.
When I was coaching high school, Smoke, I wanted guys that were excellent evaluators and excellent communicators. It allowed you to get straight to the business of if the player was good enough to play at the school or not. I'm going to start off with my top 3 guys right now, Smoke. I'm going to go with wide receiver coach from Ohio State, Brian Hartline. I'm going to follow that up, tight end coach, University of Kentucky. We had him on the show last week, Vince Morrow. And finally, special teams coordinator from the University of Iowa, LeVar Woods. What about you, Smoke?
Man, Carl, that is a strong list, man. You went from top to bottom, east to west, north and south. But I'm going to go ahead and knock it off with my list. I'm going to start off with Kevin Beard down at the University of Miami. Then I'm going to go ahead and come on up to Alabama and touch on my man Freddie Roach. Then I'm going to take it a little bit west of the Mississippi and top with my man Todd Bates, defensive line coach at Oklahoma.
Those are some of the best guys and the best guy in the game. A lot of legends on that list. You got to pick one guy to highlight, Smoke, out of those 3 guys. Who is it and why?
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and highlight my guy, Freddie Roach. And this is why I'm going to touch on Freddie Roach. I'm going to hit on Freddie Roach because he's been at Alabama and they had a change. And one of my thing is when you recruit, everyone looks at recruiting as a saying, how am I going to retain my high school players when I'm recruiting them from high school? But Carl, you know, the recruiting game has changed. You also got to retain the players on your team. And when they had that massive shift with Nick going ahead leaving and the earth shut down for a complete day, Roach was retained as a coach and he retained all of his recruits. And when you're on the recruiting trail and you talk and you hear about Freddie Roach, one thing that you hear about Freddie Roach is he builds relationships. He's able to go up in Canada and go get one. He's able to stay in his home state and capture that. But also, when you look at it, his room, the guys that he coached, the guys that he's been with, all love him. They don't leave. They stay there because they know they're going to get developed, then they're going to get a strong coaching, and they're going to get somebody that really cares about him. So when everyone looks at recruiting, they always look and say, hey, who's going to get these 5 stars? Get whatever you can get, but retaining them, Carl, is the key and an advantage. Who you got for yours?
I have to go with Brian Hartline, wide receiver coach at Ohio State. If there's one thing that's true in this business, every wide receiver in the country is hoping that Brian Hartline walks through their high school and offers them a scholarship to Ohio State. When you talk about the guys that they've had at Zone 6, Hartline has identified, he's evaluated, he's developed, and he's been right there with some of the top guys that ended up being first-round draft picks. The most recent is Marvin Harrison, but the list goes on and on of quality guys at Ohio State in that receiver room. And Brian Hartline has been a legend. High school coaches love him. The trainers love him. And he has been excellent at continuing the tradition of elite wide receiver play at Ohio State, Smoke.
Man, Carl, you said a mouthful with yours. But here's what I'm going to ask you about Brian Hartline. I've seen him on a recruiting trail. Do you have any personal stories with him?
Brian Hartline came to St. Louis several times because we had a great group of receivers in St. Louis. He hung out with the high school coaches. He let you know what he was looking for, not only from a talent perspective and having elite speed, but also from a character standpoint. How important was character and the kind of guys they were bringing into Ohio State locker room? He spelled it out and left you with no doubt the kind of person, the kind of player, and the kind of human you had to be at Ohio State. He did a great job building relationships with the high school coaches in the area, and people felt like that about him across the country. When I would call my guys in Ohio, when I would call my guys throughout the country and say, is Brian Hartline a guy that I could trust? Everybody said the same thing. No doubt about it. Hartline is the real deal.
Well, you know, what you're saying about Hartline, you pretty much say about Freddie Roach himself. You know, you go back and look at Alabama's defensive line, and even the edge players, they look the same. Thick, heavy-handed, long, athletic guys that got the job done. And like you just said, a good recruiter is always going to have to know what kind of product are you going to bring into the room? What type of character guys you're going to bring into the room? If it's the same and you've been working with the same guy, you know exactly what you need. Carl, man, listen, top recruiters in the game. I'm loving this, man.
Smoke, the thing about Freddie Roach as well, when Freddie Roach was at Alabama, when he's still there, Nick would a lot of times put him on the guys that they needed to have the most. It didn't matter if you were a defensive lineman, a quarterback, a receiver, a DB. If Freddie Roach was recruiting you, that signified how important you were to Coach Saban that you ended up at the University of Alabama if he was the guy that was chasing you.
Carl, he did recruit Caden Proctor 100%, and then he got him back again. So like you just saying, legend in the street, master communicator, and ability to relate.
All these guys on our list, Smoke, are guys that are the backbones of their program from a recruiting standpoint. There's several other coaches, but they told us we can only have 3, so we're going to leave it there. Back to you, Emily.
Only 3 for this show, but thankfully that is just a taste of what you will get twice a week on a full Unfiltered with Carl, Reed, and Smoke Dixon. New episodes drop every Wednesday and Friday right here on the 247 Sports YouTube channel. Highly, highly recommend you tune in this Friday for a very special guest joining the guys. That's all I'll say. It's what we call a tease in the business here, Blair. I want to bring it back out to you, though, because we keep talking throughout this entire show about how wild the month of June is going to be. And so we talked about what happened last weekend, but I want to look ahead to this upcoming weekend. Tell me, where are all of our guys going to be throughout the network of 247 Sports? Where can our viewers expect some team coverage coming up this weekend?
We're going to be fully staffed at the Under Armour next Camp Series stop in Salt Lake City. It'll be me, Brandon Huffman, Greg Biggins, our good friends. And then the OT7 Nationals in Tampa will also have a huge group of 247 Sports representatives as we bring you all the highlights, all the recruiting buzz, all the news, and then obviously all the official visit scoop from this coming weekend. So make sure you stay locked into 247sports.com.
I was just talking to new Nashville resident Tom Loy, who works at the desk right next to mine, which is fantastic. Glad to have him here in town. He is headed down to Tampa, so make sure that you tune in for all the coverage on 247sports.com. That's it for our show. For Blair Angulo, I'm Emily Proud, and this is the College Football Recruiting Show.